I love curiosity. I love not having to be right. If it feels yucky in your gut, you've got to say it because maybe there's something there that we're not seeing yet. And we have made some of the best decisions when somebody questioned what we thought was our decision.
Hello and welcome to Courageous Leaders Connected Teams. I'm your host, Stephanie Freeth, and I am so excited to have Paul Blatt joining me for an amazing conversation today. Paul's the CEO of Gesher Human Services, and we're so excited to have him. So welcome, Paul. Great to have you.
Great to be here. The introduction, I was the 5, 4, 3, 2. I thought we were on iCarly. I was very excited, and then
we'll create our own version, right?
Right.
Awesome. Well, today's episode, we're really going to dive into how Paul has been using conscious leadership at Gesher Human Services. We're both in the Southeast Michigan area. Paul and I got to know each other through Leadership Detroit, which is a program through the Detroit Regional Chamber of Commerce. I was doing some training for that program, including bringing in the Enneagram and conscious leadership. And when I first met Paul, he was part of a cohort of about, 60-ish people. And he was a vice president at what was called JVS at the time. And I have gotten the privilege to really watch Paul from, what year was that, Paul? Back in 2019. So I've gotten to work with Paul since then, on and off, work with his team, see him go through a merger, see him go through so many different things. And so I thought he'd be the perfect guest just to talk about his own courageous leadership journey, because there's so many great stories to tell. So Paul, tell us a little bit about Gesher and what you do.
Sure, thank you. So Gesher, as you said, is a merged organization, previous Jewish Vocational Service, and another organization named Kadima that did mental health services. And so 3.5 years ago, we brought those two organizations, building on the strengths of those organizations, with a mission to provide support and help for people at home, at work, and in the community. Gesher is the Hebrew word for bridge. So we're the bridge to support and bridge to where people want to be. Our mission is to serve the Metro Detroit area while meeting the needs of the Jewish community. And so framing that a little bit, in the Metro Detroit area, we last year served over 33,000 individuals and about 2,700 people within the Jewish community. So we are serving Metro Detroit in a meaningful way, supporting a workforce, supporting people with mental health challenges, and providing supported housing for those individuals, and other places where we're supporting people, day program for people living with dementia, clubhouse for people with mental health challenges, creative expressions, art program for folks. So lots of different ways, lots of different partners.
Amazing. Yeah, the work you do is far-reaching and really impactful. There's always this question in leadership about nature versus nurture. And do you feel like you have always had a spark of leadership in you? Or, when did you know you wanted to lead an organization like Gesher? How did that evolve for you?
So when I started arguing with my teacher in 4th grade, I knew there was something that had to happen. But I think also, my second week Catholic Social Services in Muskegon, and 30 plus years ago, I met our executive director. And on that day, I said, I kind of want that dude's job. And I was like 22 years old, knew nothing, barely knew how to drive to my apartment. But there was something within me that said, I could see myself in that. But even then, you have to do all the really hard work to prove yourself out during that time and do the jobs that you don't want to do, right? To then make room for somebody to identify you as a leader within that space, to have those opportunities presented.
And just so we can understand, what were some of the roles that you had along the way?
So I started my career working with families at risk of placement because of abuse and neglect. I was a case manager working in people's homes over on the west side of the state, and then up in the Thumb area for those Michiganders. And I had to do a case management job. And then I had to leave the field because it wasn't meeting my needs. I needed more, wanted more. I went out and became a headhunter. right? I started like changing my whole everything, went to profit, went to commission-based job. I mean, it's such a change. 99, 2000 was hitting and the economy was shifting. And I'm like, got to get something stable. So I went and jumped in and went to do HR within an organization, and then the economy wasn't stable, right? And so found myself unemployed and trying to always have to acknowledge that like it was tough. It was hard. People said, you're going to be okay. You'll be fine. And at the time I said, I get it, but it feels really not great. I think I said, but I don't know if you're letting that in. So, and then I pivoted and went and worked a contract with UAW Ford and had to find my way in that space and started to get some opportunities for some associate director or something, but I didn't have anyone else directing, so I'm not sure what that was supposed to be. And then to finally, start getting into a more of a director role at that time, having some teams that I was working with. And then, I found myself unemployed again.
I think sometimes people think that the road to a CEO job is more linear, and often it's not. So just hearing your story is really validating for people. Like, I always talk about the role of contrast. Doing one thing helps you then see what the next thing is. And if you're just learning and growing, there's no wrong moves, even when it's tough along the way.
I say to my kids, we don't know our journey, right? We have to go on it and we have to do our best while we're in there. And life's going to take us in lots of different directions. And we just have to recognize that if you keep doing what's the right thing, it'll land fine. You'll make it. It'll be good.
So building on that, when you were first learning about conscious leadership, and there's a book called The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership by Jim Dethmer, Diana Chapman, and Kaylee Warner-Clamp. And you, of all of your cohort, really seemed to take it in and seemed to apply it. And especially in that, I watched you transition from being a VP and then being about to take on the CEO role. What was it about conscious leadership that resonated with you so much that you wanted to bring it into your organization?
So I think the first time you made us breathe, I was kind of like a little bit, what is this? I got to be honest. I'm like, that's a little woo-woo for me. I'm not sure if I'm there. But when we started talking about to me and by me, the concept of allowing life to happen to you, or are you going to control of how you're going to respond to life? And I had a team where I had a group of folks that were really victim mentality. And I was trying, as I was hoping to then, move into a CEO role, I had to change a culture where people just weren't buying into this, like we have some control of how we respond to things. And so when you talked about that in one of our sessions, I was like, that's the methodology that I could bring to my team, that we all can have a similar language. We can all start talking about how we're showing up today. Are we below that line or above the line? And really start to put a uniform language around it so that we can make it happen. It was funny because when I called you and said, I want you to come and bring this to my team, and you're like, I will only work with an organization that the CEO is 100% committed to it. And my response to you was, well, our current CEO is not, but in 2 weeks, we'll have it all figured out.
I remember that. And I think you have proven that out. Like, for this body of work to really settle in to an organization, to become the operating system, I find that the leader has to embody it. And I think about something like agreements, commitment 6. It's about integrity, wholeness, energetic wholeness, not just good, bad, right, wrong in terms of moral integrity, which is important, but energetic wholeness, being able to say who will do what by when. And I saw that being one of the first commitments and ways of being that you brought into your day-to-day work. What was that like for you?
So that's that concrete thing that we could grab a hold of. And I've also realized, though, if we're not showing up as our true authentic self, then those commitments don't mean anything. And just last week, we had a conversation. I did a refresh with some of my team, and we were talking about like what's working and what's not working. And one of the teams identified that they have these impeccable agreements, right? They're making these impeccable agreements at the end of a meeting, but they're not following through on them. And my response to them was, well, I don't know how impeccable those agreements are, right? Because When we talk about impeccable agreements, that means you're going to do what you say you're going to do in the time you're going to do it 9 out of 10 times. And it sounds like you're not there. So maybe you need to go back and really think about, when you commit to each other, are you really being sincere and authentic when you're doing that?
Yeah, and whenever we talk about that, we talk about making agreements from a whole body yes. And if we don't have a whole body yes, head, heart, and gut all aligned, then we don't make the agreement, or we renegotiate, or you open the space to talk about what could get in the way of fulfilling this agreement, but talk about it on the front end. And then if you're going to break that agreement, go back and renegotiate as soon as you know that it might be different. But you're right, like having it be in a book and living it in practice, it takes what we call toddling. It takes practice. It takes, hey, we're going to mess this up. We're human. Let's recommit. Let's try to get back at it.
Yeah. That whole body yes is another huge thing. In our leadership meetings, we take the pulse before we move on decisions. And if somebody doesn't have a whole body yes, we pause. We really go back and let that person try to articulate what it is that doesn't feel good. If it feels yucky in your gut, you've got to say it, because maybe there's something there that we're not seeing yet. And we have made some of the best decisions when somebody questioned what we thought was our decision. To be able to pull that back and to uncover something that we missed has been such powerful work.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. And it takes courage to create that space, to invite early on. Some people want to just move ahead and be like, let's go forward with the decision. But to invite that early on can be really powerful, like you're saying.
Yeah. And it's not easy, right? It's not easy to give up that control at times, right? We think the leader, we're supposed to be the one that has the right answer, and to be able to slow down and to be humble enough to say, like, I'm not sure if I have all the data. I don't know if I'm all the way there. Like, I feel like we're not there. And to be able to say, help me get to that place, then encourages us to the rest of the team to feel like they can bring everything to the table.
Great. And let's build on that. So I think a lot of leaders think that they need to hold their team members accountable. And it's very different in the conscious leadership framework. It's really about responsibility and taking responsibility, which is something that we have to do. We can place blame away from us, or we can take responsibility. So, and then another thing that goes alongside that is curiosity. So I'd love to hear from you how you're living both of these concepts, commitment 1 and 2, taking radical responsibility and being curious, letting go of blame and judgment, being like, I don't know the answer to this, but we're going to figure it out. Do you have examples for how you've been living those two?
Yeah, the accountability piece, it's fascinating because I had the opportunity to do this 360, right? So a couple years into my role, and you and I discussed that 360, and 2 of my direct reports, the thing that they wanted most from me was this accountability piece. Even years that moving into, and we're talking about accountability all the time, they still wanted me to go deeper on that. And part of it was I had to be 100% accountable to them and for everything that I said in order for anyone else to start taking accountability. And so, I have to live it. So if we say everyone has to have this performance management done by this date and I don't do it, then everything falls apart, right? So that's part of it. And it's also then turning it back to people and say, you made this commitment. So how are we going to move forward in understanding that you're making a commitment to us? You're the one that needs to be accountable for your space. What do we need to do to help you? Or what, is this not always great? And unfortunately, or fortunately, some people couldn't live that space, right? Some people, when you're talking about being held accountable or holding yourself accountable 100%,
taking responsibility, yeah.
Taking that responsibility, they had to leave because it was uncomfortable for them. They were looking for blame. They were the same people that were victims when we first started the process. And so it really showed very big. And then on the other question of curiosity, I love curiosity. It's like my favorite thing in the world. I love not having to be right.
Wow, that's a powerful statement. How many leaders would say the opposite? They want to be right. So you're saying, I love not having to be right.
Some of my work has been learning why I needed the control to be right before. And for me, it was that need to have approval by everybody, right? So I wanted the approval of my team and I wanted the approval of my board and I wanted everyone to like me. And some of that desire is what drove me to get to the place that I am today. And sometimes that really kicked me in the ass.
I'm glad you brought that up. And often when we're in a state of threat, one of three things is at risk: approval, security, or control. And it's a beautiful question we're always looking at in coaching. And for you to be able to pinpoint, you know what, approval's at risk here. I'm reactive about this decision because I'm not feeling like I have the approval that I need. That's deep work to do.
Yeah. And when we talked about it, it was like, what nugget, what is the value, what's the gift that desire gives me? And once I could see that's how I got to be driven and all those things, then it came back differently. So the need for approval, I could be comfortable. I wasn't scared for approval. I was finding it from this higher place, this more relaxed place, which then gives me the ability to be curious.
Beautiful. That's such a great illustration.
Yeah,
I call that finding nuggets of gold from below the line or from a state of threat. And if we're not willing to kind of excavate that reactivity, find the gift in it, because we have these parts of us that are just trying to keep us safe. And they've been doing their job for a long time. We want to bring out their gifts. We want to be like, oh, we don't want to get rid of this part. This part has kept me safe. This part is a flag or it's a guidepost. And yet, when you find those reactive parts, being able to use them from a state of curiosity and wonder and growth, that's what really supercharges. I don't know, it's a very human thing. You go from being like having blinders on to being able to use that without blinders on from a state of curiosity. That's what it feels like. As you step into curiosity, do you feel like more options open up? How does that show up for you?
All the meetings that I feel that are going to be the tough meetings, and my team comes to me and says, how are we going to address this thing? And my answer always is, we're going to be curious. Just yesterday, we were having a little bit of management issue and some poor behaviors by some of the team within that group. And so we brought our human resource professionals in the room, and we brought a couple of those managers in the room. And our approach for the meeting was, let's just start wondering what's happening. Let's listen, let's hear, let's take it in with the belief that the right thing will start to emerge. If we had come to it thinking that these managers suck or that they're causing the problem, or if we had it that the staff all need to leave, whatever it was, then we would have missed other things. Right? And we actually landed in this really, really wonderful space where we started talking about, when does this team operate best? And so we came in with all this stress and all this yuckiness, and we left with, like, let's build on when this team is working best.
And I gotta say, there have been times, this idea of the belief. A belief is something we think over and over again. And I heard you just use belief in another way, but there's been moments where I've said to you, that's a belief. And
Wait.
even like,
No. So I just got to call you out. So when you disagreed with me in something that I said in front of that group of 70 people, and you're like, I made a statement thinking I was so smart, and you're like, well, that's a belief.
That's my job, right? Well, and now I'm hearing you have such a different access point to notice when's the belief a limiting belief, and when you start from a different belief of like, well, when's this team working its best? Curiosity, wonder. Like, I'm hearing you have a whole different level of access to asking those big questions and holding the space for something new to emerge out of the ickiness.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't need my right answer. We need the right answer. It's really cool stuff. But it's scary a little bit, right? So when I've been training my team, I'll do a little breathing with them. And the one thing that I say to them is that this is powerful stuff. Like already in one of your episodes, right? You were talking about the power of breath and all those things. And I still haven't gotten brave enough to start like all of my meetings taking a moment for a breath, right? It still doesn't feel still feels a little bit uncomfortable for me. And I tell when I'm training, I'm like, all right, I'm doing this because their slide is there and I'm going to do it. But if you come into a meeting, I'm not going to, I probably still not brave enough to start my meeting with like, let's change our brain chemistry and really get into this space in the way we should. So much more that needs to be done.
Great. And there aren't a ton of CEOs out there, I imagine, that are starting with breath work. And the possibility of that happening more and more often is what lights me up, because our breath is our life force. And it's a biohack to be able to work with the breath, especially if we're in a reactive state, we're in a stressful situation, cortisol's running. Our breath is our quickest way to regulate, and learning to be comfortable with that, even in business settings. I've had to do it too. I've had moments I'm like, okay, I was the hard charging MBA who's like, what am I doing? Starting with this breath work. And now I can't imagine not doing it. In fact, we should have started today with some breathing.
I was looking forward to it. I thought you were going to ask me if I was above or below the line. That's how every other conversation we've ever had was. But the other thing that I have seen as we talk about like changes within our organization, and I haven't done it direct work with my board yet, but when I watch the way our leadership team interacts with our board, boards can be intimidating, right? Boards come in and they're all well-intentioned and they all want what's best for the organization, and they don't live it day to day the way the profession. And so their questions and their demands at times feel very threatening, and they you in this state of fight or flight, like, oh, I have to answer it right. I don't want them to be disappointed in me. And the thing that our board talks about most right now is how comfortable our professionals are at saying, let me understand more what you're asking of us, right? I think I know your answer, but before I start answering, let me make sure I have the right question, or maybe like, let me understand what you're looking for. And that has shifted the dynamics with our team and our board in such a powerful way, because we don't have to be defensive when somebody is asking a question, because we're going to understand better and we're going to believe that they're coming to us from this right place. And so it affords us the ability to really give a good answer and really bring the right data forward.
That's a great example. And I'm imagining all the practice that your leadership team has had working with each other first around that, so that by the time you're in a more potentially stressful situation like a board meeting, it's integrated, that it's showing up as who they are and how they're interacting. And that's a great example. If you are a team leader looking to build more cohesion, more productivity, more alignment within your team, you've come to the right place. I'm Stephanie Freeth, and I love doing team Enneagram workshops. These workshops are really incredible. We go through an assessment process where we look at the type structure for each team member. I meet with the team members one-on-one to make sure the type is resonating. And then we meet in person for a half day, and I bring out my Enneagram carpet. We go through each of the 9 types. We talk about what is it like to be this type structure with its varying strengths and challenges. And I always invite each team member to say, what is it that you need your team members to know to work best with you? So it creates this beautiful, compassionate space. There's vulnerability. We laugh. We just cover a lot of ground in getting to know each other and knowing how we can best support each other in a team environment. So if you choose to go forward with this, make your deposit now. These workshops do fill up. I'm only doing a couple of them a month. And make sure that we have a conversation, because your final total
will be customized based on your team size, based on some optional things around the way. But if you want to secure your spot now, go ahead, put your deposit down, and we will get you scheduled. We'll get started. I can't wait to work with you. This is a really powerful thing to do with your team, particularly if you're a new leader, if you have some changes happening in different roles and different people coming and going. Now's the time to schedule your team Enneagram workshop. I can't wait to work with you and get to know each and every one of your team members.
Let's build on the idea of the board. And I know, having gone through the merger, a lot of times it's the cultures of different organizations that will cause a merger to fail. So if there's any lessons you're willing to share from what that was like from the inside, or lessons learned along the way, because you navigated it well. And I know there were ups and downs and lots to consider, but anything you want to share with our listeners about what that was really like?
Well, we did it during COVID. I became the CEO March 1st, 2020. Later, we were engaging in conversations about potential mergers as well. So we had a worldwide pandemic and starting conversations about a merger. Some of the conversations had started before I took the role, and we were moving forward with that dialogue. And, the one reason why a merger doesn't go through is because it's usually somebody's ego. And it's usually, there's scarcity mentality in the room. So really asking the questions like, what do you need out of the original conversation was with two execs. What do each of us need in order for this to be successful, right? And then really starting to ask the board what they need to be successful. So it's a lot of curiosity again, right? And, when it got tough, we went back to this single question. And the thing that was on the table was, would our community be better if these two organizations came together? And if we continued to answer that as yes, then we had the ability to move forward. And so when we were seeing things differently, we asked that question again. Would our community be better and people we're serving be better if we come together? And that helped move conversations through. And so that was a big piece of our work. And we intentionally trained our leadership on this common language of conscious leadership, so that when we were going through these conversations, when we were feeling defensive and scared, we had the ability and we had permission to bring that forward to people that we may not have had a close relationship with as well. So all of that.
So how does it show up too in terms of two other commitments, candor and gossip? What did you notice? Because a lot of times when you are transitioning and maybe information isn't forthcoming, gossip can start to become rampant. How have you noticed, does gossip have any role in your organization? How has that changed, or what's that like?
Yeah, our team is really good at gossip. So we're good. We're supposed to not have gossip. Oh, I got that commitment wrong the whole time. Shut me. Oh no. You can feel when somebody is not, really bringing forward, right? That they're holding something back. When that starts happening, then trust erodes, right? And then when you can't trust the person, now you start questioning, and that's where gossip starts to happen. We had one of our team members who would not share that they disagreed with what was happening. And then they would then go back to their teams and not execute on the decision that was made. Similar type of person that was this to me thing, like they acted like they had no control, and they were given all of the control in the world to share and to say they disagreed. And possibly, could have been that I didn't create a safe enough space that they felt that was true, or they just really didn't have it to bring to our workplace, right? It was just never going to happen. But when people are withholding, you can see in the teams that are struggling the most, they're the ones that are not living their authentic self, and they're kind of playing these games.
And then how do you invite people to say, when we withhold, we're bottling up our energy? How do you invite, hey, candor is welcome. We want to have everything on the table, even if it's the tough message. How do you create that safer space?
my thought is that it's easier. I mean, that's really, I tell folks, I'm a pretty simple person. Like, let's just do the easiest thing possible, right? If it's the right thing, let's just make it the easiest way. We don't need to bring drama into it. We can just like have the conversation and get to the place that we need to be. And it's not, we can spend all of this energy and we're still gonna have to come back to the table and have this conversation again. So why not just come forward and let's put that out there? And hopefully, people see it enough that they believe that's sincere, right? I think that's part of it. We have some folks that have gone through some stuff. They had trauma in our organization, let alone trauma in their lives, where it wasn't safe to share at times in this organization. And we have to remind them again, that didn't work out so well for you. Maybe next time we just bring it forward and have the dialogue.
Yeah, that's a good point. We all kind of get burned. And sometimes when the culture is different for people who've been there 20, 30 years, and then it starts to shift, that there's that long-term building trust, building relationships, really making sure people feel like, are we actually safe to say this? Is this okay?
Yeah, we had one of the compliments I've gotten. We had one of our direct support professionals who's been with the agency 25 years, and she was talking to previous employees, and she was sharing the story with me, and she said, so they asked me if it's the same way there at Gesher, and she goes, I told them it was different. And I'm like, oh, is that good or bad? Like, I didn't know. And she's like, no. And like, when you come down, we know that you're coming down to learn and to bring joy. You're not coming down to find flaws in what we're doing. And so that's some powerful stuff too.
Yeah. Anytime the word joy is invoked in the workplace, I cheer because we need more of it.
No, there's no fun in our organization.
No, not at all.
Cutting out, like laughing, no joy. Come on, get to work.
So let's pick up on that. I know we're getting close on time here, but what lights you up? Like, what's your, I view your leadership journey as you had so many natural skills and you keep implementing, more for your team. And what's your growth edge right now?
I mean, what feels amazing is watching my team. Our execution, we were a good organization before, and I was in our last board meeting and we were reporting out and talking about like strategic plan stuff and just the fact that we had a strategic plan and we actually were living it, and we're talking about our values on a daily basis, but we had like strategic plan update and fiscal update and our compliance update, and the board was just in awe of the work, right? And it was because like these folks made a commitment to the work and they were holding themselves accountable for 100% responsibility for their work, because I could not have done, I may have been able to do each of their work if that was what my job was, but it was their work and they shined. It was so incredible. And to see like all of us just having meaningful conversations about really tough stuff because we're embracing some of this work, it's meaningful. Because then I know 33,000 people are going to be treated really well.
Yeah, the ripple effect of that is really powerful. And no CEO can do it all. You need the team. That's why we need these powerful, connected, aligned teams.
It's funny because our current CEO is operating at such a high level. Former board chair asked me how I was the COO at one point. She goes, because you don't have any of those skills. So
okay, you're I see. Okay, got it.
Yeah, he was doing so well, but when I was doing it, maybe not so much. That's what I heard. Maybe she was saying a compliment. I don't know, but.
So before we wrap up, is there anything you want to share that's been an important part of your leadership journey, or anything that you want to share? And then I'll have one more question for you after that.
Yeah. I think it is about the ability to be vulnerable. Like, I'm still working on being able to feel my feelings in the right place at the right time. And that's with any of this work. When our true authentic self is coming out, that works in our families, in our community. The work is about how you show up as a human more than being a CEO of an organization. it and continuing to be able to be that person is where the reward comes in.
That's beautiful. Yeah. So I like to close with all my guests to ask, what is courageous leadership for you? I heard you mention vulnerability just now. Is there anything else that really characterizes courageous leadership for you?
It is that vulnerability. You really, if you're willing to allow for that to happen and to support the individuals around you, which is like, it sounds like that just makes sense, but that takes a lot of courage to let yourself not have to control everything. And so the more that you can show up and really bring just that vulnerability, I think that you get to this place where beautiful things can happen.
Yeah, it's so great. And I find that for me personally, the more vulnerable I'm willing to be, the more connection happens. And it's kind of on a heart level. It's if I'm perfect, I'm actually not connecting.
And I'm not perfect, so.
None of us are. Yeah. And yet that courageousness, that lack of perfection builds connection more than many other things.
Sure. And I have to just thank you for all the work that you've helped me through. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, thank you for being here today. If people want to connect with Gesher, whether there's volunteer opportunities or things we can include in the show notes, anything you want to tell about connecting to your work and how people can follow you more.
Sure. So if folks are on LinkedIn, go ahead and connect with me. I'd love to be able to find out more about their journey. So Paul Blatt on LinkedIn, GesherMI.org. We do amazing work for the community, for folks. And, I'd love to have the conversation, tell people more about our work and how amazing our team is.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Paul. I really appreciate your vulnerability, your candor, and just sharing the story of your leadership journey.
Thank you.
So until next time, stay courageous, stay connected. See you again soon. Bye-bye.